The Supreme Court on Wednesday said it's going to hear arguments next month regarding the constitutionality of the federal law that could ban TikTok in the United States if its Chinese parent company does not sell it. The justices will hear arguments on January 10th, and former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani is here. Neama, is this good news for TikTok?
Austin, this is potentially very good news for TikTok. They were dead in the water just a few weeks ago when a three-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals held that the law did not violate the company's free speech. So we know the Supreme Court, of course, does not have to take appeals. They have discretion and they only accept a small percentage of appeals. But not only do they accept this appeal, they set an expedited briefing schedule and they're going to hear oral arguments in less than 1 month. Obviously, it takes 4 of the 9 justices to agree to hear an appeal, but reading the tea leaves, TikTok has a chance that they certainly did not have just a few weeks ago.
So what exactly are they going to be arguing on the 10th? Refresh us, because it's not as simple as yay or nay on banning the app. Its parent company ByteDance is tied up in this, and so is free speech. What do we need to know?
TikTok's argument is that the law requiring TikTok to divest from its parent company, a Chinese company, ByteDance, is an unlawful regulation of speech. So the government is, of course, going to argue that this isn't a free speech issue at all. It's a national security issue, and the justices shouldn't address the free speech First Amendment argument. But if the justices do, it'll really turn on, is this a content-based regulation of speech? And if so, that tends to be subject to strict scrutiny, which means that unless it's really necessary for a compelling government interest, those type of content-based regulations, they're struck down. Of course, the government will argue that it's content neutral, in which case they'll be subject to a much lower standard, which is rational basis. And of course, here the government saying this is a national security issue. Having all this data in the hands of a Chinese company, which may be accessed by the Chinese government, that's a problem, and that's why this regulation is necessary.
TikTok, Neema, has more than 170 million users in the U.S. If you're going by census numbers, that's about half of the country. Could the popularity of the app weigh how a decision is made ultimately?
Of course, there's the law and there's politics. And now that President-elect Donald Trump is potentially coming out in favor of the app, he may be able to give the company a lifeline. Of course, Republicans will control both houses of Congress, so maybe they'll pass a law to reverse this current law. And I know that the company is lobbying both Trump and Republicans on the Hill as well. So TikTok is taking a two-pronged approach, both the legal side before the Supreme Court now, but they're still not giving up on passing a law to reverse this entirely.
What about the national security implications of TikTok? It's a Chinese-owned app. The U.S. Court of Appeals, I don't need to tell you this, the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit found that concerns were legitimate that the Chinese government could access data about American users on the app. Are those concerns relevant as far as the upcoming arguments go?
They are very relevant, Austin, and I think the national security concerns are the reason the government may win this case. We've seen it before with the Muslim ban, for instance. The courts are really loath to delve into foreign policy, national security issues, and if there's a reasonable basis that the law is passed not to regulate speech on the app, but to protect the American people, then the justices are going to be much more likely to affirm the lower court ruling and uphold this law.
Trump and Republicans are going to control not only the White House, but the House and the Senate as well. Regardless of how this plays out, this current case plays out, could they simply just pass a new law once they're in control?
Austin, they absolutely could pass a new law. And we know that Trump, what he views on this issue has considerable sway in Congress. I mean, look at the continuing resolution just from today. We may see a very different version of that bill or no bill at all. And Congress may come to a standstill and we may have another government shutdown. So I think President-elect Trump's view on this is going to be very important for congressional Republicans. And there's the very real possibility that regardless of which direction this goes in January before the Supreme Court, that Congress could potentially reverse all this.
So does it feel like no matter what, the powers that be will find a way to keep TikTok running in the U.S.?
Potentially, free speech is a very strange issue before the Supreme Court. And the reason I say strange is it's really tough to predict. Historically, the liberals in the court have been bigger proponents of free speech, but there's some instances, and this is corporate speech, where the conservatives have actually favored free speech. And of course, that big decision was Citizens United. So when it comes to the First Amendment and free speech, unlike other issues before the Supreme Court, it's a little bit more unclear and unpredictable, and it's a wild card. I don't know which way the justices are going to line up on this one.
Former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani joining us tonight. Talk soon.
Thanks, Austin. Talk to you soon.